All of us are affected by life events, hardships, pressures, and difficult circumstances from time to time. When pressures from work related to a new project, a deadline, or a promotion mix with the pressures in our personal lives related to a move, a marriage, birth of a child, a divorce, the death of a relative, when these things knock us down emotionally, the difference between whether or not we will get back up is in direct proportion to our ability to be resilient in the face of adversity. Resilience describes the internal and external resources we can leverage to cope with and overcome hardships and difficult circumstances. I had experiences in my personal life where I had to practice what I preached. A few years ago, my daughter was born, and she came into the world 11 weeks early. And I can tell you, I had a tremendous amount of fear, anxiety, and just outright panic when the doctors came to me and said, we have to do an emergency C-section. And I can recall that moment very, very vividly in having a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. And I was able to leverage the resources in the operating room. I talked to the doctors and I talked to the surgeons and started to learn a little bit more about what was the severity of this situation. I had no experience with babies that were born up to 3 months premature. And so I started building my network of resources kind of right there on the fly to help me to cope with the challenges of my daughter being born. She came into the world at 2 pounds 11 ounces. She's 2 years old now, and she's doing really, really great. But in that moment, there was a lot of anxiety, and it had an impact on the work that I did. And had I not been developing resources, both leveraging those that I have within myself and developing my internal, just leveraging those internal skills of resiliency, as well as building a community of people, it would have been very challenging. Recently, I had my second child born, and he came pretty much on time. The challenge we had there was that we found out that he has Down syndrome, and that created, again, a lot of different anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. And when pressures like that we experience in our personal life happen to us, and they mix with the things that we're dealing with at work, it can create a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and people value developing coping skills to develop in these areas. One of the things that I find in doing resiliency workshops and training and coaching in this area to help leaders and employees improve on their existing skills is the fact that perspectives, our point of view, our perspectives, cause us to take certain actions, and those actions lead to certain results. Now, in developing an action plan to get better results, we start in reverse order, and we look at what are the results that we want to create. How will our lives be different when we create the results that are important to us? What kind of impact will these results have when they materialize? Then we take the participants through an exercise where they look at what are the actions that will support the achievement of these results. One way to do that is to envision the future and then walk backward from that future to identify the actions that will support the accomplishment and the fulfillment of the results that we want to create. And then finally we look at what are the perspectives that will need to be changed as a result of this process for us to sustain this newly developed skill or advanced level of skill in being a resilient person. Another way to look at it is acting our way into a better way of thinking and behavior that leads to the results that are so important to us. Perspectives relate to those filters through which we experience the world. We have filters in every area of our life, and they just instantly happen. We don't consciously map out what those filters are. They just happen through the experience that we have. It's kind of like if we go skiing and we put on a set of amber sunglasses, and for a while the world looks interesting and different and vibrant. But after a period of time, that way of seeing the world, that perspective, that through that lens of those amber glasses, it becomes just part of who we are. We don't really notice that we're seeing the world a certain way. And this same dynamic is at play when we're dealing with stress, anxiety, pressures that may negatively impact our ability to work and interact with other people. And these negative filters become the way in which we perceive the world. And they come upon us very, sometimes quickly, sometimes very slowly, but it's almost like we become like fish swimming in an aquarium. we don't realize that we're surrounded by water because it just becomes part of how we experience things. These perspectives are always changing, and they're impacted by the circumstances, by situations, and by new information. Community is another aspect of becoming a resilient person that is really, really key. Most of us are more well connected than we realize, but we enjoy, human beings like forming groups and communities. What oftentimes fails to happen, particularly in the workplace, is people are not intentional about building their community, building their networks of people and resources to support them when they need it. It's always better to build the resources, the network of community before we need them. Also, having diversity in our community members is really, really key because it helps us disassociate from the emotions that are associated with the stress and pressures that we're under, that help undermine our ability to make decisions and overcome challenges that we're facing. And sometimes these challenges to the outsider may look very simple, but people can become paralyzed. And when we have that diversity in community, it can have a really huge impact. These are a few of the areas that we explore with participants when we do a workshop or a seminar on resiliency. Now, we work with your leaders to design a resiliency program around the outcomes you want to see happen for the employees who participate. We use lecture to introduce ideas, but spend most of the time facilitating group discussions so participants can share ideas and discover actions they can take to build upon their existing resiliency skills and develop new ones. Contact us to discuss how we may co-create a resiliency program for your employees.